Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a seriously fascinating cosmic worldview today, drawn straight from our source material. It's a seminar text that directly connects ancient theology with some pretty futuristic geopolitics. We're going to be looking at a framework that completely reframes how humanity might view its place in the universe, focusing specifically on a figure known as Lord God El Cantare. Now, whether you're already familiar with these specific theological texts or you're just curious about how certain spiritual movements interpret global events, this is going to be a deeply interesting journey.
So let's dive right into this. The sources present what we can basically call a macro-theological framework. Think about traditional religions for a second. They mostly focus on earthly matters, human history, and individual salvation, right? But the text we're examining today asks a massive question. What happens when you shift that perspective away from our everyday earthly disputes and zoom out to the vastness of the entire universe? The teaching suggests that humanity actually needs to rapidly evolve its understanding to grasp this unified cosmic reality, expanding our worldview way, way beyond our own atmosphere.
And when they say cosmic, they literally mean cosmic. According to the text, this entire worldview is grounded in the existence of the Creator, described here as a cosmic savior carrying a monumental 100 billion-year history. Let that number sink in. This isn't just about the history of human civilization. The source claims this entity created the macro-universe from the very beginning. It completely redefines the timeline of divine intervention, positioning El Cantare as a being with a history that predates the Earth itself by billions of years.
This seminar material, titled The Mission of Lord God El Cantare and the Future of Earth, outlines how this figure intends to spread one very specific ultimate truth. And that truth is that God rules not just our planet, but the entire universe. The text positions this as a major ideological shift, arguing that while earthly religions have served their purpose, they just haven't fully addressed this broader cosmic reality that humanity is apparently about to step into.
To unpack all this, we're going to hit four main areas today. First, the great laws of the universe. Second, the battle between totalitarianism and freedom. Third, the value judgments leading up to 2050. And finally, cosmic-level defense. All right, let's get into Section 1, the great laws of the universe.
The teachings introduce this massive concept called the laws of the universe. The argument here is that traditional religions were somewhat limited by the smallness of the human mind and heavily localized to Earth. The laws of the universe, however, are presented as the ultimate guiding principle. It's essentially a total upgrade in spiritual framework, asserting that the exact same divine principles that should govern humanity also govern the stars, the galaxies, and literally everything in between.
It really all boils down to this one simple but honestly profound quote from the text: God rules the universe too. By recognizing this, the text attempts to prepare humanity for a brand new era, specifically an impending era of interaction with humanoids from other planets. So it's essentially cosmic diplomacy, but grounded completely in theology.
So what does living in that new era actually require? Well, the text emphasizes a massive shift. We need to move from seeking individual enlightenment, just improving yourself, to collective enlightenment, which involves understanding macro-level truths. This includes learning about the multidimensional structure of the universe and even the secrets of how alien souls are created. The overarching goal is to provide a universal compass, basically a set of instructions on how humanity should live and navigate as we enter this broader cosmic community.
Moving on to Section 2, totalitarianism versus freedom and prosperity. Now, let's bring this cosmic scale back down to Earth for a minute. The text sets up a very stark contrast when looking at current global ideologies. On the left side, we have what the text calls God's heart, which aligns with pluralistic, free prosperity. Then, on the right, you have the forces of darkness. The text actually labels the authoritarian side as demonic invasion capitalism, describing it as a system that fundamentally opposes the freedom of the individual and seeks to completely manage and control its citizens.
According to a text called The Laws of Bronze, the way to counter that totalitarianism is by spreading three core concepts globally: freedom, democracy, and faith. The source frames establishing these three pillars not just as a nice political preference, but as an absolutely mandatory cosmic-level defense against the expansion of authoritarianism and control.
To actively fight off this authoritarian push, the worldview insists we urgently need to reclaim two specific things: virtuous politics and a spirit of diligence, which basically means hard work. The text describes these two elements as a kind of ideological vaccine against malevolent invasions.
It's a strong call for active, moral engagement in our society and our government, rather than just being passive observers.
I think this empowering stance is captured perfectly in this quote right here. Light is reality, darkness is merely an obstacle. It teaches followers to view things like totalitarianism, control, and fear not as permanent, fixed parts of the human condition, but just as temporary blockades. In this framework, darkness has no true substance of its own. It only exists in the places where light hasn't reached yet.
Which brings us to Section 3, Value Judgments Toward 2050.
Okay, so central to surviving this upcoming period is this concept of value judgments. The text states that El Cantare is continuously issuing these judgments as a sort of spiritual compass. They are specifically meant to guide nations safely through some severe, impending global crises. Whether we're talking about economic depression, global conflict, or dramatic population decline, these value judgments are presented as the essential navigational tools we need to prevent global ruin.
Looking at the timeline laid out toward 2050, the text argues we're facing some intense global pressures right now. Over the coming years, following these continuous value judgments is believed to create a kind of natural sorting effect on Earth. By around 2050, the text predicts a clear separation. Civilizations that actually align with these values will prosper and remain, while totalitarian states and even malevolent alien influences that rely on control will naturally just be sidelined and retreat from the global stage. The sources actually cite some pretty dramatic warnings about this timeline. They suggest that if humanity doesn't change its ideological direction, the global population could be drastically reduced. The text mentions a potential scenario where the population could literally drop from our current 8 billion down to just 4 billion by 2050 due to these cascading crises. It's presented as a very stark warning of what happens if those value judgments are ignored.
And that leads us right into Section 4, Cosmic Level Defense and the Future.
The primary defense strategy here is based on what the text calls the law of wave resonance. This is the idea that similar frequencies naturally attract one another. If humanity's collective mindset is filled with fear, division, and darkness, it invites dark cosmic forces right in. But if the planet's collective thought is actively kept filled with light, the darkness simply cannot tune in, their wavelengths won't match, which essentially creates an invisible planetary shield.
So how exactly do we maintain that light? Believers are given some very specific steps. First, hold a faith that surpasses any earthly political power. Second, fiercely protect freedom of thought to prevent what the text calls human robotization or cybernetic mind control. Third, maintain that collective light across the globe. And fourth, it calls for global mobilization, meaning action by believers worldwide to eventually create a new UN to replace our current dysfunctional global organizations.
The source gets into the real urgency of this defense, reporting claims that malevolent aliens actually use earthly totalitarian regimes to chip away at global energy. The text argues they do this through division, instilling fear, and stripping away human rights. Because controlling a population of independent, free thinkers is nearly impossible, protecting free thought is seen as the ultimate literal shield against this kind of cosmic invasion.
Ultimately, the grand goal mapped out in the source is this massive, unified global action. It envisions worldwide missionary work by the Happy Science Group to establish those three vital rules we talked about: freedom, democracy, and faith. It foresees a time when humanity unites, outgrows the current United Nations, and forms a completely new global body. All of this is preparation. It's the groundwork required to elevate humanity for a peaceful, faith-driven entry into a true cosmic space age.
The overarching narrative across all these documents is super clear. Humanity is at a massive turning point right now. The text argues that we must rapidly evolve our understanding. We have to stop getting bogged down in petty earthly disputes and wake up to a unified cosmic reality. The mission is transitioning from just saving individuals to elevating the entire planet's consciousness.
As we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with one final, really provocative thought derived directly from that law of wave resonance. If it's true that the collective thoughts, fears, and hopes of humanity literally dictate the kind of cosmic future we attract, you have to ask yourself, what kind of universe are we building with the global mindset we hold today? Are we radiating light, or are we tuning into the darkness? It's an absolutely fascinating lens through which to view our world. Thanks so much for learning with me today.
Welcome to today's explainer. We are diving into something absolutely wild today, unpacking a truly fascinating and frankly highly complex document. My job is to take you directly into the source material and break down these intricate ideas so you can see exactly how they're built.
Today, we're looking at a text that blends esoteric, spiritual cosmology with very modern, very earthly geopolitics. We're going to impartially decode this narrative, a story involving extraterrestrial beings, high-stakes spiritual warfare, and the future of global superpowers. It's quite a ride, so let's get right into it.
All right, so here is the specific source material we're analyzing today, a seminar text titled The Mission of Lord God El Cantare and the Future of Earth, spoken by Cosmic Messiahs. According to this document, what we're about to explore are not human theories at all, but channeled messages from extraterrestrial entities who are deeply concerned about the fate of our planet. It presents this massive worldview where the spiritual realm and our physical, political reality are completely intertwined. Here's our roadmap for the explainer. 1. The Cosmic Messiahs. 2. Who is our goal? 3. The Reverse Universe Threat. 4. Earth's Geopolitical Crisis. And 5. Defending El Cantare.
Starting off with Section 1, the Cosmic Messiahs, Messages from Beyond.
Now, the text actually documents channeled messages from three primary cosmic entities, Metatron, Yaidron, and Ryuho. And while Yaidron functions almost like this god of justice and Metatron works to spread divine thought, we are going to focus our explainer today entirely on one incredibly prominent figure in this cosmic alliance. That is Ryuho.
Moving right into Section 2. Who is Ryuho, a cosmic profile?
Okay, before we can really talk about Ryuho's identity, we have to establish who he is actually working for. The entire source material hinges on a figure named El Cantare. According to the text, El Cantare is the creator god of Earth, and this is the crucial part, the document claims he is currently incarnated in human form down here on our planet. So all of the cosmic beings mentioned have one primary directive: defend El Cantare at all costs.
So what does Ryuho's cosmic resume actually look like? Well, the text gets super specific. He's described as a cosmic being from Ursa Minor, specifically the star Andromeda Beta. He isn't just passively observing us either. He is explicitly named as one of the commanders of the Space Defense Force. The text says he possesses the qualifications of a messiah, meaning he brilliantly combines religious leadership with the literal power to build superior civilizations on a planetary level. On top of that, the source identifies him as an alter ego of the cosmic soul of Buddha, Shakyamuni. Basically, that makes him an extension of the creator El Cantare himself. And his sole mission right now is defending the incarnated El Cantare on Earth.
Which brings us to how he plans to do that. The text channels a really fascinating direct warning from Ryuho. He says, if El Cantare preaches the law and tries to build a nation aligned with God's original mind, the dark force's wavelengths will become incompatible. Think of it almost like a spiritual force field. By creating a physical and spiritual environment here that is perfectly aligned with divine will, it acts as a frequency shield. The dark forces simply won't be able to exist in that space because their spiritual wavelengths will clash entirely. That brings us to Section 3, the Reverse Universe Threat, the Cosmic War. The source material sets up this massive binary conflict. On one side, you have what Ryuho champions, cosmic justice. According to the text, this is a pluralistic, multidimensional worldview that actively promotes freedom, democracy, and prosperity. It's essentially a universe of light. But on the exact opposite side, you have the reverse universe. The document describes this as a dark, invading force that operates on a rigid, one-dimensional value system trying to literally turn everything upside down. So it's an ideological war of freedom versus absolute control playing out on a galactic scale. And the stakes are pretty high. Ryuho warns that this dark force is trying to metaphorically turn Earth into a black hole. The text explains that this invading force wants to flip the Earth's spiritual realm entirely, turning what is white into black and transforming heaven into hell. Because Earth has supposedly nurtured so many messiahs throughout its history, capturing and inverting our planet is framed as the ultimate strategic prize for these dark entities invading from the reverse universe.
Now for Section 4, Earth's Geopolitical Crisis, the Earthly Manifestation. Here is where things get really interesting. The text argues that the cosmic battle we just talked about isn't just happening in space, it is physically manifesting on Earth right now as an urgent geopolitical crisis. According to Ryuho, defending cosmic justice means we have to actively defend freedom and democracy down here. The opposing force from the reverse universe, well, that's manifesting directly through totalitarianism. The text sounds a massive alarm about totalitarian states, specifically pointing to nations like China, claiming that their aggressive global domination policies are the literal earthly execution of this dark cosmic invasion.
And the text does not hold back on the specifics. R.A. Gohl explicitly claims that totalitarian forces, heavily utilizing Marxist ideology, intend to completely eliminate democratic resistance. The document states point blank that China's goal is to erase nations like Japan and Taiwan, absorbing them as mere provinces. It frames this not just as your standard land grab, but as a deliberate ideological cleansing meant to establish a totalitarian world, entirely devoid of spiritual freedom.
There's also a very strict timeline attached to this warning. In the present moment, the text claims we are witnessing the deliberate weakening of developed, democratic nations through ideological subversion. Looking ahead, the document flags the year 2030 as a critical tipping point, warning that American power and influence could completely reverse or collapse by then. And the ultimate deadline? The text states that by 2050, the opposing totalitarian forces plan to have fully achieved global domination.
Finally, Section 5, Defending El Cantare, the strategy. So, what's the solution? The document outlines a highly structured, three-step defense strategy. Step 1 is very earthly and political. Humanity must actively establish nations and societies that are deeply aligned with God's will, prioritizing freedom, democracy, and faith. Step 2 is the consequence of Step 1. By raising the spiritual wavelength of the planet through these free societies, Earth will effectively repel that dark invasion from the reverse universe. And Step 3 is the ultimate cosmic outcome, using the principles of cosmic justice to completely seal away the dark forces, protecting the planet permanently.
To bring this all together, R.A. Gohl insists that building a nation on these divine principles is literally the only way to make the dark forces incompatible with Earth. And remember, there is that urgent deadline to shift global values before 2050. Ultimately, the text argues that the entire purpose of this cosmic intervention by the Space Defense Force is to ensure that the teachings of El Cantare survive, thrive, and permanently protect our planet from falling into the reverse universe.
Which leaves us with a pretty massive question to ponder. According to this text, humanity stands at an absolute crossroads. Will Earth successfully defend freedom and democracy, embracing what R.A. Gohl calls cosmic justice? Or will it succumb to ideological subversion, falling entirely to the reverse universe by 2050? It is a stark, intense framework that blends the cosmic with the incredibly current. Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.
Welcome back. Today, we're diving into some truly fascinating seminar materials where cosmic theology crosses right into modern geopolitics. We're looking at a completely unique perspective that takes the vastness of space and ties it directly to the earthly political struggles we see on the news every single day. So grab a seat, because this explainer is going to take us on a wild ride from distant galaxies straight down to our own political systems.
Let's decipher these materials together. The text we're examining today outlines the cosmic forces supposedly at play behind major global events. It specifically focuses on the mission of a figure known as Lord El Cantare and a powerful cosmic entity tasked with protecting that mission. Now, as always, we're just here to impartially unpack what these sources are saying and really understand the worldview they present.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at Yaidron, the cosmic god of justice. Second, the crisis of Earth conquest. Third, the threat of brainwashing and robotization. Fourth, protecting the El Cantare civilization. And finally, the critical decisions leading up to 2050. All right, Section 1. Yaidron, the cosmic god of justice. Before we get into the earthly conflicts, we really need to define exactly who the sources say this entity is. The text dedicates this whole section to establishing Yaidron's profound cosmic credentials. It positions him as a highly qualified, authoritative figure within a massive cosmic hierarchy long before he even touches down on his earthly mission. According to the texts, Yaidron is a space being originating from the Elder Star in the Magellanic Clouds. Out there, he functions as basically the highest-level judge and politician. The sources say he possesses Messiah qualifications because he actually received El Cantare's teachings on a specific Messiah training star. In Earth's spirit realm, he holds immense power, acting essentially as a god of justice. And right now, his primary job is to serve as the outer guard for El Cantare, which means overseeing Earth's civilizations, wars, and even major disasters. Moving on to Section 2, the crisis of Earth conquest. With Yaidron's cosmic resume established, the text pivots hard to reality. The source material sets up a stark, unbending ideological contrast. On one side, you've got the light, which the texts equate with freedom, democracy, faith, and the teachings of El Cantare. On the flip side is the dark, characterized by totalitarianism, a relentless push for global hegemony, and the total loss of fundamental human rights. This brings us to the actual earthly conflict the texts are warning about. According to Yaidron's messages, certain global powers, and the text specifically points to China here, are actively working toward this Earth conquest. The sources claim these forces are attempting to defeat the G7 and Western democracies. Their ultimate goal? To impose a single-power worldview, driven entirely by totalitarian ideologies and dark universe influences. Section 3. Brainwashing and robotization. Now, what's really interesting is how the threat shifts from global geopolitics down to individual control. The texts outline a pretty chilling step-by-step progression used against everyday citizens. Step 1, the state steals or heavily monitors personal information. Step 2, once that surveillance is locked in, they systematically strip away human rights and individual freedoms. And Step 3, the ultimate goal, creating a robotized or cyberguised society where citizens are completely manageable and totally devoid of independent thought. Just look at this quote directly from the seminar materials. They are trying to make humans manageable, transforming them into robots or cyborgs. It's a stark warning. The texts argue that this ideological manipulation and the push for a total surveillance state is a direct existential threat to the spiritual freedom of humanity. In this worldview, it's not just a political issue. It's literally a cosmic spiritual crisis. Section 4. Protecting the Alcantara civilization. So, you might be wondering, how do you even fight a cosmic and political battle of this magnitude? Well, according to the materials, you don't fight this darkness with traditional weapons. The texts state that the absolute best defense is the active protection and aggressive expansion of what they call the El Cantare civilization. The source material insists that promoting core values, freedom, democracy, and strong spiritual faith is basically the essential vaccine against the brainwashing tactics of these opposing forces. The argument here is simple but powerful. If people are firmly grounded in these principles, they just can't be easily manipulated or turned into those manageable robots the dark forces are looking for. Taking it a step further, Yaidron actually issues a specific call in the texts for followers worldwide to rise up simultaneously. The material even floats the idea of creating a new UN to replace our current failing global institutions. They argue that a completely new, spiritually aligned global order is absolutely necessary to maintain cosmic justice here on Earth. And finally, Section 5, Decisions for 2050. All of this cosmic strategy brings us to a highly specific earthly deadline. The text outline a timeline where present-day ideological conflicts are just going to escalate. By 2030, the source warns of a dangerous reversal of global power dynamics, where totalitarian forces might actually gain the upper hand. And all of this builds toward a definitive, do-or-die ideological climax set for the year 2050. Look at Yaidron's message here. We must apply value judgments to everything that happens up until the year 2050. The crucial takeaway is this intense demand for hypervigilance. The source material is basically demanding strict discernment from humanity over the next few decades. Every political shift, every societal change, it all has to be judged through the lens of whether it promotes freedom and faith or totalitarianism and control. We're going to leave you with a provocative thought directly inspired by today's source material. In the face of impending totalitarian threats, can humanity align its collective mind to establish cosmic justice? When spiritual philosophies map onto our real-world future this intensely, it really forces us to ask, how do our earthly political choices echo out into the wider cosmos? Regardless of your personal beliefs, these texts definitely provide a fascinating framework for looking at modern geopolitical struggles. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're doing something really fascinating. We are going to impartially map out a pretty mind-bending esoteric cosmology. We're looking at the cosmic biography of a space being known as Metatron, and we're pulling this directly from a highly specific set of seminar texts. Whether you're already familiar with these theological concepts or you're literally hearing about them for the very first time, it's an incredible chance to see just how intricate and expansive modern spiritual frameworks can get. So we're going to trace a journey that spans from the distant stars down to ancient human history, and eventually right up to the modern day. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's kick this off with a massive question that this framework poses. In the texts we're diving into today, there is a central figure named El Cantare, who is presented as an earth god with this huge, grand mission. But here's the catch. According to this cosmology, El Cantare isn't working entirely solo. So the big question is, who exactly is the mysterious cosmic entity working behind the scenes, right there in the shadows, providing literal and spiritual backup to El Cantare? Well, to find that answer, we have to look directly at our source material. This is a seminar text titled Seminar on the Mission of Lord God El Cantare and Earth's Future. Now, this text is incredibly unique. Why? Because it details messages that were purportedly received from extraterrestrial entities. But, we aren't just talking about any space beings here. The text claims these are entities holding actual Messiah qualifications. Basically, cosmic saviors who are deeply invested in Earth's spiritual evolution. And one of the loudest, most prominent voices in this entire text, that belongs to Metatron. Now, before we can really wrap our heads around Metatron, we need to understand this concept called Amor. The text defines Amor as the space soul of Jesus Christ. And here's where it gets wild. Metatron is described not just as a buddy or an ally, but as a literal part of this cosmic consciousness of Jesus. This creates this immediate, profound link between the extraterrestrial figure of Metatron and, well, one of the most recognized religious figures in all of human history. It totally bridges the gap between traditional, earthly religion and this much broader galactic theology.
Section 1. Who is Metatron? Origins in the cosmos.
So the source text actually gives Metatron a very specific cosmic address. He's identified as a space being originating from the Include star, which is located way out in the constellation of Sagittarius. The text is also really quick to emphasize that he holds what's called a Messiah qualification. Basically, this means that out there in the vastness of the universe, Metatron operates as this highly evolved spiritual leader. He possesses the immense authority and power to guide and literally save planetary civilizations.
Section 2. Earth's history, Mesopotamia, and cosmic battles. But Metatron's influence definitely isn't restricted to deep space. Just consider his timeline right here on Earth. We start way out in Sagittarius, sure, but then the text notes a massive event. About 6,500 years ago, Metatron actually underwent a physical incarnation on Earth, specifically right in the Mesopotamia region. I mean, this wasn't just a quick flyby. It was a direct insertion into the very cradle of human civilization. Then, the timeline stretches all the way to the present day, where his role shifts back to that supportive, behind-the-scenes backup for El Cantare. But what exactly was he doing back in ancient Mesopotamia?
Well, during that ancient era, Earth was apparently the stage for these massive, catastrophic conflicts. The source material states that Metatron stepped in as one of the gods of light, a faction completely dedicated to establishing peace on Earth. When these tremendous battles broke out, sparked by opposing cosmic forces, Metatron stood as a symbol of cosmic power. He used his advanced spiritual authority to help quell the chaos and restore some much-needed balance to the planet.
Section 3. Cosmic support, backing up Jesus and El Cantare.
The text also details some absolutely fascinating interventions in human faith. Because Metatron is part of that Amor soul group we talked about earlier, he's said to have provided direct spiritual backup during Jesus Christ's time on Earth. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't just backup. The text even proposes a pretty striking reinterpretation of a famous biblical event. It suggests that the Star of Bethlehem, the star that guided the wise men, was actually a space intervention, a UFO. But there was a catch. The text notes a major limitation. During Jesus' time, the full scope of the universe, what the text calls space law, just couldn't be taught. Humanity simply wasn't ready for it yet. I mean, think about it. If Jesus was born in a humble stable, trying to explain the complexities of extraterrestrial beings and galactic laws would have been completely overwhelming.
And because he has this incredible long-term perspective on human development, Metatron is also documented in the text issuing a pretty stark warning, one drawn straight from ancient history. He points specifically to the legendary lost continents of Mu and Atlantis. Now, according to this framework, these civilizations didn't just disappear because of some random natural disaster. No, their fall was deeply tied to a spiritual failing.
He basically frames this as a clash between two totally different mindsets. On one side, we have true faith, which is a genuine spiritual connection and a real understanding of our place in the cosmos. But on the other side, we have what Metatron calls machine faith or reason faith. The text argues that ancient, super advanced civilizations like Atlantis actually fell because their incredible technological prowess caused a fatal drop in their spiritual beliefs. They began to worship the machine and their own scientific mastery, and they completely lost their connection to the divine. Metatron warns that when a society reaches the point where they can confidently say, hey, we can travel to space, but they completely lose their faith in the process, they're just inviting their own ruin. It's a cyclical warning, and man, it hits pretty hard for our modern tech-driven age. Section 4, The Creator's Thoughts, a Universal Mission. So,
This brings us to the real core of the seminar text. What's happening right now? Currently, Metatron is utilizing his immense cosmic power to back up and support El Cantare. The whole goal here is to allow El Cantare to fully demonstrate his authority and power as an Earth god. Metatron is basically acting as the ultimate cosmic support system, making sure that the earthly mission isn't derailed by those opposing forces we discussed earlier.
And that leads us to perhaps the most expansive idea in the entire text. I want you to hear this quote directly from page 324 of the seminar notes. Metatron states, El Cantare is the creator, but actually trying to spread God's thoughts to the whole universe. This right here reveals the true macro goal of this whole cosmology. Metatron isn't just trying to save Earth. He aims to help the Creator distribute his philosophy, his teachings, and his thoughts far beyond our atmosphere, out into the entire universe. Earth, in this view, isn't the finish line. It's merely the starting point for a galactic spiritual awakening. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. We've explored this highly complex framework today, where a being from the Sagittarius constellation supposedly intervened in ancient Mesopotamia, backed up Jesus Christ, and is now actively working to spread a cosmic philosophy. Within the context of this theology, it really forces a massive paradigm shift. Think about it. If space beings with Messiah qualifications have been intervening for over 6,500 years, well, how much of our human history, our religions, our ancient myths, our biggest societal leaps, was actually guided by the stars? It's absolutely a fascinating lens through which to view the story of humanity. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.
All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking some seriously fascinating spiritual texts that tackle, honestly, one of history's ultimate mysteries. Why do highly advanced ancient civilizations collapse? But look, this isn't just some dusty history lesson. The source material actually draws a direct line between the ashes of the past and the trajectory of our modern world today. It's a pretty urgent warning, so we're going to break down exactly what these sources say about why these great societies fell apart, and, well, how we might avoid doing the exact same thing. So, you gotta wonder, why did incredibly advanced societies like Mu and Atlantis just completely disappear from the map? It's a question that's captivated people for centuries, right? Were they wiped out by some random natural disaster? Or was there some kind of deep internal catalyst for their destruction? Well, according to the source material we're looking at today, their erasure wasn't just a geographic accident. It was actually the result of a very specific, catastrophic shift in their society.
Section 1. The mystery of ancient civilizations' collapse.
So the texts claim to reveal the real, hidden reasons behind these historical collapses, starting with the civilization of Mu. And the text points out that Mu didn't just start out in chaos. Actually, quite the opposite. It flourished. It saw immense prosperity, and the texts say this happened precisely because it was deeply rooted in spiritual devotion. They were guided by the divine teachings of the god La Mu. Essentially, their entire foundation was built solidly on faith. But then, over time, a really tragic shift happened. Early Mu was all about that deep spiritual devotion. But as time went on, and as their science and human intellect started to grow, the society developed a massive over-reliance on those things. That pure faith that literally built their civilization, it started to slip away, setting the stage for their ultimate downfall.
Section 2. Common Factors of Mu and Atlantis.
Now, what's wild is that this pattern shows Mu wasn't just an isolated incident. The text introduces two really crucial concepts here: machine faith and reason faith. It defines these as an extreme over-reliance on technology and human intellect. It's basically the tipping point where human intellect entirely replaces belief in the divine. The people got so obsessed with their own scientific progress that their original faith just vanished. And according to the sources, this loss of faith, driven completely by technological arrogance, is identified as the absolute core reason for their collapse. Let's track this trajectory by looking at Atlantis. Because just like Mu, Atlantis started with a divine foundation. Then, boom, extreme technological advancement. The text even mentions they reached a scientific level where they were pondering space travel. But right at that exact peak of scientific achievement, this machine faith took over. Their spiritual faith plummeted, and that triggered a total civilization collapse. It's like reaching for the stars, ironically, caused their own destruction, all because they lost that spiritual balance. Section 3. The crucial difference from space beings. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The documents actually compare these failed human civilizations with successful extraterrestrial ones that are currently visiting Earth. According to these spiritual messages, these advanced space beings have technology that is vastly superior to ours, way beyond our comprehension. Yet, they maintain an unshakable spiritual faith. They haven't let their hyper-advanced science destroy their belief in the divine. And because of that, they've achieved a perfectly balanced, enduring civilization. I really want to emphasize this comparison because it is essentially the core thesis of the text. On one hand, you have past Earth civilizations. High tech plus lost faith equals total destruction. On the other hand, you have these advanced space beings. High tech plus unshakable faith equals lasting prosperity. The source material uses this to prove a point that scientific advancement absolutely does not require you to abandon spirituality. You can have both. In fact, the texts argue you literally must have both to survive. Section 4. A strong warning to modern Earth. So, how does all this ancient history connect to us? Well, the stakes for our present day are incredibly high. The texts include a specific recorded passage where a spiritual entity identified as Metatron delivers a very direct, very harsh warning. The document outlines how the exact same spiritual illness that infected those ancient societies is right now sweeping across modern human civilization. The diagnosis for today's world is laid out pretty clearly here. The source text asserts that modern Earth is showing the exact same fatal symptoms as late-stage Mu and Atlantis. Think about it. We are leaning so heavily into science, artificial intelligence, and human reason, while at the exact same time, authentic global faith is rapidly fading away. The text neutrally, but very firmly, observes this parallel, suggesting we are basically entering our own era of machine faith. And this brings us to the ultimate cautionary message from the source material. The text explicitly warns, and I quote, "If the teachings do not spread, modern civilization will become like Mu and Atlantis." According to these documents, without a massive resurgence of faith, and the texts specifically point to the teachings of Lord El Cantare here, we are doomed to repeat this whole cyclical collapse. It presents a stark choice, really: restore our spiritual balance or face the exact same erasure as the ancients. So I'm going to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. As our modern technology reaches for the stars, literally just like Atlantis once dreamed of doing, what's going to happen to our society's soul? Based on the fascinating texts we've explored in this explainer today, will we actually manage to maintain our spiritual balance like those advanced space beings? Or are we just actively repeating the history of Atlantis? It is a profound question about the ultimate fate of our technological era. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I really hope this deep dive into the source material has given you a whole lot to think about. Welcome back to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating, highly complex text that blends geopolitics, metaphysics, and cosmology all into one. Our source material comes from a series of spiritual readings focused on the mission of Lord God El Cantare and the future of Earth. Now, whether you're totally familiar with these teachings or you're hearing about them for the absolute first time, don't worry. We're going to break down these massive cosmological concepts into clear, manageable steps to understand exactly what this text claims is happening to our world right now, and, more importantly, the specific defenses it outlines to protect humanity. So what exactly happens when earthly authoritarian control collides with actual cosmic intervention? It's a staggering scenario. The source material proposes that the geopolitical struggles we're seeing today, especially the rise of despotic regimes, aren't just human political issues. According to the text, these earthly power grabs are aligning with dark extraterrestrial forces. And the stakes? They're nothing short of the ultimate survival of human free will. Here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll start with the cosmic threat itself, then we'll walk through 3 specific defenses: faith and freedom, virtuous politics, and the power of light. Finally, we'll wrap it all up with how these combine in sealing the darkness. All right, let's jump right into part 1, the cosmic threat, and this concept of a brainwashing society. To really grasp the defenses, we first have to understand the threat. The text identifies a highly coordinated danger aiming to construct what it explicitly calls a brainwashing society. It claims that malicious space aliens, negative cosmic entities, are actively influencing certain authoritarian states on Earth, specifically pointing toward regimes like China. The idea is that these dictatorships are essentially being used as vehicles by these dark forces to push a model of absolute state control, stripping citizens of their thinking ability and basic human rights. It's setting up a massive clash. On one side,
you have the natural human state, defined by free will and independent thought. On the other, the ultimate goal of these authoritarian regimes and their cosmic backers, a robotized or cyborg society. The readings argue that these invaders want to conveniently manage us, stripping away our rights to create completely subservient populations that operate like predictable machines. And why do they want this? Well, the endgame isn't just about earthly political dominance. The source claims that once this highly managed, roboticized state is achieved, once the brainwashing is complete, the final step is a total hijacking of human society and the human soul itself. If our minds are empty to free thought, the text warns, malicious entities can just swoop right in and take over.
Okay, so that sounds incredibly intense, right? Let's move to Section 2 and look at the first defense against this: faith and freedom as a mind and spirit shield.
Now, what's really interesting here is how the text positions spirituality as a totally practical, root-level defense system. It argues that earthly dictators desperately want to be recognized as absolute authorities, essentially as gods on earth. Because of that, simply having strong faith and acknowledging a divine being beyond earthly rulers completely shatters their illusion of control. Faith, in this framework, is the ultimate shield against state-sponsored brainwashing.
And taking that a step further into the metaphysical side, when you firmly hold on to free thought that's backed by strong faith, your mind becomes basically impenetrable. Remember that soul hijacking we just talked about? The source claims that if individuals hold their ground with independent, faith-based thought, it becomes incredibly difficult, almost impossible really, for these negative space aliens to enter your mind or hijack society. Your own internal focus is literally your first line of defense.
Which brings us to Section 3. Let's look at Defense 2, virtuous politics, which acts as the societal shield. So, individual faith is your personal shield, but to protect the globe, we need collective action. The text outlines rules based on what it calls cosmic justice, principles like freedom, democracy, faith, virtuous politics, and a spirit of diligence. These aren't just nice political ideas. They're framed as universal laws meant to protect human dignity worldwide. The goal here is to push for a higher level of cultural prosperity through further development rather than getting stuck in control and stagnation.
In fact, the source literally refers to virtuous politics and the spirit of diligence as a vaccine. A vaccine against what exactly? Against the invasive, controlling desires of despotic states and what the text identifies as reptilian extraterrestrial influences. By reclaiming ethical governance and hard work, humanity essentially immunizes itself against this specific brand of totalitarian brainwashing.
Moving right along to Section 4, we've got the final, most metaphysical layer of defense, the power of light, or the cosmic wavelength defense.
To really get this one, we have to look at a core rule presented in the text: the law of wavelength resonance. Basically, this principle means that similar spiritual vibrations attract each other, even on a cosmic level. So if the Earth's collective mindset, our collective thought, is full of fear, terror, and despair, it creates a dark wavelength. And according to the text, that directly invites those malicious, dark forces right in. But here's the flip side. The strategy says we have to actively maintain a collective mindset of pure light, often pictured as a pure white vibration free of fear. The text urges followers to confidently assert that the essence of the universe is God's thought, meaning only light is real and darkness is merely an obstacle. By aiming for a diverse, free, and prosperous world in line with the laws of El Cantare, humanity actively repels the darkness because our wavelengths just don't match up with theirs anymore. Okay, finally, Section 5, Sealing the Darkness. This is the ultimate synthesis of everything we've talked about. So how does this all come together systematically? It's a three-part machine. Step 1, you secure your own mind with faith-based free thought. Step 2, you secure society by reclaiming virtuous politics and diligence as a democratic vaccine. And Step 3, you secure the entire planet by affirming that only light is real, managing the collective wavelength of Earth. When you combine that internal shield, the societal vaccine, and the cosmic conviction of light, you get a total defense mechanism. The text claims this specific combo fundamentally mismatches Earth's wavelength with the darkness. It leaves zero gap for malicious aliens or totalitarian regimes to intervene. It effectively puts a heavy lid on the darkness, sealing away those cursed past civilizations and dark forces for good. It's a huge, intricate framework that ties your own everyday individual thoughts directly to massive cosmic struggles. So,
I want to leave you with this. Based on what we've unpacked in this explainer today, how do you view the intersection of your own free will and the future of human society? It is definitely something to chew on. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you next time.